Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to UBOS CPD webinar. Topic for today's session is client management. We are going to see a recent update on one of those new regulations about virtual verification as well. We're going to keep it to the end as it's only an appendix that we're going to be showing all of you, as well as we're also going to show a few things how ULaw has implemented this particular feature into the program. But in the meantime, I'm hoping more folks join in. So let's give it about a couple of minutes and get started. Thank you. And if anyone's having trouble hearing me or if the audio is not clear, I request you to switch to the phone audio. Once you click on the audio mode, there's a computer option and a phone option. Please do use the phone option for better quality. Thank you. Once again, a very good afternoon. I see that many of you are having trouble hearing me. I request you to please switch to phone audio. I am happy to share the audio coordinates here. And for the ones who are already on the webinar, I have shared the attendance link on the chat window. Request you to use the chat window for any questions at any time. And I would be posting the attendance link along with the topic details towards the end. Once again, thank you for joining today's webinar, and I'll get started shortly. I'm adding the audio coordinates here on the chat window for everyone. Please use, it's a local number. You could use that to log in to the audio, and kindly use the code for meeting so that you'll be able to join the audio. I hope everyone's able to hear me, and I've shared the links. Once again, posting the attendance link with today's topic. The topic for today's session is Law Office Client Management. It is accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits. And please use the link to post your attendance so that in future, if you have any questions, we'll be able to confirm that you had attended the webinar today with us. As you all can see, The agenda is very similar to our previous time, which is on the same time last month, around a month back in April. But one of the reasons we thought we would do today's webinar is definitely to showcase to all of you the recent regulation from Law Society about virtual verification that has come up for client intake. And using technology, ULaw is able to provide to all of you this particular feature, and using it in ULaw, how you would be able to verify where client's verification may be for a facial accreditation or a simple SIN validation or a criminal check or a criminal record check. We're going to see this particular topic at the end, as I already mentioned. But otherwise, the agenda is pretty simple and straightforward. We're going to see client intake using different formats, starting with paper pen, which is definitely the client intake form, using the old school method of, like I said, paper pen. And then we're also going to see client intake form via portal, via QR code intake forms. How could you do your own client intake forms? All of this. And we're also going to look into compliances that is aligned with client intake service and communication. When it comes to compliances, we all know that what comes in front is the conflict check and fee book and other associated documents, including source of contacts. But for a client intake, what is more important is to record all the details of communication, and while you're probably handling a correspondence or a consultation with them, and starting with recording the details to moving on with conflict check. Now, if you are someone who's using a legal software or legal practice management software rather, you're going to be able to download these within no time. But if you're someone who does not use a legal accounting software, uses only a simple accounting software, you have an additional responsibility to download these from your respective Law Society websites, and manually use your, maybe your system or a paper pen to write down the details of your client to verify the conflict check, and also other associated Law Society compliance documents when it comes to client intake. Keeping in mind at the very beginning, please determine the fee and make sure that whatever is the method of fee, whatever is the method of communication that you prefer to have with your client, you jot them down in the retainer letter, which is one of the first few agreements that you get into with your client, and depositing, understanding how these retainers are going to be deposited into trust accounts, what is the method of payments that you prefer, everything to be highlighted in the very first agreement that you get into with your client. And while you receive the retainer, also issue a receipt showing that you have received the retainer, which includes how it was paid, who had paid for it, and what was the amount, the date, and other information. So a receipt is probably issued to a client to show the confirmation of, obviously, receipt of money. And at this time, when you are servicing the client, it is very important that you show the professional, time where you have spent to gather the information, at the same time complete all of those compliance requirements alongside with other documents that you're going to be collecting from your client to complete their verification of IDs. Now, while you are working on this particular client intake service and communication portal, or using maybe the manual method of data entry, or data obtaining the data rather, this is a very evident step for you to collect all the information from the client and establish the kind of relationship where you have you are able to express to the client all the required information, not just for the purpose of gathering the information to update the records in your system, but also because you're responsible to provide these information to Law Society at the time of virtual verification or at the time of client ID verification. Now, if for some reason all the information that you've collected at the time of client ID verification or virtual verification, it does not work for you to complete the file or the work. Let's say, for example, there's a conflict, or there's something that's come up and you're not able to share. Obviously, information is confidential. You would go ahead providing non-engagement letter to the client because you no more have any engagement with them, and you have probably decided to forego the file. And it is important that you end this conversation with a positive note, and also with an evidence that you're no more in engagement with this particular client. So client intake service and communication does not always end with a successful note. There can also be a time where you are not engaging with them for various reasons. You could then refer them to a client if it's your wish, or if you can always gently let them know the reason why you're not taking up their file, and provide them with a non-engagement letter so that in the future they don't hold you responsible for any of those acts that was done or that was not done. Now, since client intake service and communication is the key area of exchanging your requirements with the client and showing them the responsibilities at your end and at their end, it is very important that when you draft the first piece of agreement, or the first written format of agreement between you and your client, you'll try to enter as many as details as possible, show them that these are your responsibilities versus their responsibilities, and what are the fees applicable, what is the information that you're collecting from them, and how are you going to hold them responsible if there is anything that is not true, or likewise, what are the consequences if the information they provide to you is not kept confidential. So there's so many things that forms part of this particular agreement when it comes to client intake service and communication. Now, over here, we have client intake portal. This is one of the ways in which you would intake the client. There's also client intake form, and there's also do-it-yourself client intake form that would allow you to, kind of play around with a client intake form that you would like to bring into the system. And we're also going to see how this particular virtual verification of client intake that has come up is going to be affecting many of you, and how it could, how we from Yuva could help you to, complete this process virtually. So getting back into using client intake form, one of the first few methods which people still prefer is to either manually type it in or by the client, or some people provide the information to you, and as a legal professional, you will end up entering these information. But there are some things when it comes to client intake form. It needs complete information to be done. There are client intake forms that are generic, that are family practice oriented, or that are there are different formats in which you have English, you have French. That would enable you to have different variety of formats, which you could pick up to complete the client intake. And some of the main things that you would need to know is that definitely you need to add in the information of your client. That includes, let's say, the full name as per the record, alongside with the client's date of birth, client's addresses, phone number. You need to complete the form. Yes, there are some that are not important, or that are not mandatory, but some of the fields are mandatory or mandated by the Law Society, and hence you would need to make sure that they are being entered with vigilance and making sure they're also true. So please ensure that you have gathered all the information at the time of client intake. And once these are added in, then you would go ahead doing the conflict check to ensure there's any conflict or not. Once you have them entered into the form, there's always a validate button that you can enter in there. If you're using our program, this will provide you with a validate button. You can verify the information that has entered in, including the client's personal information. And once that has been done, then you would be able to proceed with the rest of the information or the compliances that is required by the Law Society for you to complete either the conflict check or the source of contact, or preparing a retainer letter and more. So client intake form, one of the first few things that is done when you are intaking a client or when you have met with the client. When I mean you have met with the client, it's not just you have met with them at their office or at a location, but also virtually. So client intake form can be done virtually too. And if you're somebody who likes to do your own form, let's say you'd like to modify with certain information in the client intake form, and you can always do that yourself. All that you have to do is make sure to create few tags and add them into the program, and that would enable you to generate the client intake form, including the client's first name, last name. There are a few fields that I would always recommend you to verify with the existing client intake forms, or you can always browse online at your respective Law Society website and see how a client intake form looks and what are the mandatory information, and then create your own form with some additional features that you're looking for. And that would help you to, probably make your own form with all the information that you're requiring from the client. Now, I'm going to show it to you all when I'm using ULaw as to how you could use it. Now, client intake form using a portal. This has been a super hit if you're all ULaw users, where especially during COVID, we realized that many of you were not able to meet up with a client and you prefer to do something online or virtually. And we at ULaw created something called Client Intake Portal, which will allow you to send your client a link or a QR code and ask them to fill out the information using that particular link or QR code. And to enable this, obviously, you have to go into the settings and create and make sure to create a particular setting over there, and you're agreeing to use the ULA's client intake portal. And at the same time, once you are into the program where you have created the client intake form using the portal, you have the option to also now send them a link and get a copy to yourself, because you can always know how it looks at your end, and you'll be able to take any call if there's anything needed to be updated at your end. Once there's a client intake link sent to the client or a QR code sent to the client can click on it and start filling in their respective information and submit it, so that you would get an email notification saying that your new client intake has been completed, and these are the information or details of the client, and it will automatically show up under the program if you're using ULA. Again, if you see there's a client intake is more beneficial used from a legal accounting and practice management software, obviously, because you don't end up doing all of this on your own, because when you end up doing all of this on your own, it takes more time to complete, and you're not sure whether you're following the compliances properly if you're doing all of this on your own. And more than anything, if you're using a software, it's a lot of cost is being saved as your efficiency is more, and you're able to get more of work done in less of time. And you could obviously put that time into making more money, and you can save that time on what really matters, and you'll be able to work on different stuff at the same time. But if you're someone who is already using the program, I would highly recommend you to start using these features and make more time for you to work on other things. Now, it also enables you to work from anywhere. You can practice from anywhere, because these are all cloud-based, and you'll be able to work on it. And the total cost of your overheads is also reduced, as over a long period you'll be able to see there's more profit. As the efficiency increases, you would start seeing the overall profit is also increased, and you'll be able to make best use of the time that is available at your hand. And as we progress, and now we've seen how you could intake a client using a form, or a client using your own form, or if you're using ULA forms, or you could also use the portal to send them a link and complete the client intake. Now, along with it, we also have, as on Jan 1st, 2024, we also have the new regulation laid out by Law Society, saying that if you are using technology, which I'm sure many of you are in today's world, how can you do a virtual verification, and how can you securely feature all of these documents that you collect from the client using the virtual verification? And if you are someone who has the virtual client ID verification using technology, verify all of those government IDs of the client, how could you do it? Again, now ULA has introduced this particular feature called as virtual verification under your contacts, under action button that has virtual verification. And if you are someone who is not seeing that yet, it's probably because it's not live, but it's almost there. We wanted to introduce it to you as an appendix over here, and we do see that many of you would be interested with this part, which will allow you to do the facial accreditation using email addresses of your client. And if you have your client's email addresses there, you can, in that particular contact that you have added into your program, you could just send your client an email and asking them to verify the ID, issued by the government especially. And you're able to complete the verification online. Allows you so much flexibility and at the same time, a lot of efficiency over there because none of your time is wasted in, scanning documents and sending across and stuff. So you do see that virtual verification includes not just facial accreditation, but, it could be verifying driver's license, there's SIM validation, criminal record check, and even criminal record check is split into like a basic and detailed one. So you would see that right now, as per the regulation and guidelines laid out by Law Society, it recommends you to complete the virtual verification and then open a file or a matter, because before completing it, you're not sure how this particular file is, you just want to make sure if things are aligned in the order so that you can take a call and move on with creating retainer agreements or collecting retainer, issuing receipts. So many steps are there in order to complete a client intake. And before all of those, we highly recommend you to do the virtual verification. Now, everything here that you see obviously is, under the new regulation laid out by Law Society. So it is something that is going to definitely help you to verify the status. Now, once the link has been sent to the client, they can update the information, and you also keep getting the virtual verification status through email from EULAW. And once the file has been created, you also have the other background screening process going on, and it will tell you whether the entire process is a pass or fail. So the virtual verification, including all of these facial accreditation or SIM validation or knowledge-based validation, all of these they can be done as a bundle, or they can be done individually. So depending upon what your requirement is, there's a rate card that shows you each and every transaction and how it is being done. So I will walk you all through this using EULAW. Since I'm here representing EULAW, I will to show all of you how it works on EULAW. But before I get into virtual verification, let's all see how our usual client intake form and also the portal looks, and then I will switch over to the virtual verification. As you all can see, contacts here, and under EULAW, there's contacts tab, and under contacts tab, there is a document generation tab that will allow you to download a client intake form, either with a generic version that is recently done. So you have something called V2, that is the recent version, or you also have the other details such as client intake form for family, and there's a little more. And if you want to make sure that you want to send a client a French version, and you can also do a French version and send it to them, because let's say your client is from Quebec and you want to maintain, the French standards over here, you can also send them one. So it totally depends on how what you'd like to present to them. So always click on document generation, client intake, and download the forms. Once you download the forms, you can just go ahead and ask your client to start entering information directly. And once you have entered it, let's say the client has added in only a few information, and some of them are missing, they can verify if everything is good by clicking on validate. And if anything is not good, they can just click on clear form and the information goes off, and all that you have to do is they'll have to redo the information over there. Now over here, you also see that once it's done, the entire form is completed, your client sends it back to you via email, and all that you are going to do is download that particular form, come back into the program, and just simply click on import contact and upload the client intake form over here. Once the client intake form is uploaded, the client's information pops in here automatically. Now, let's just quickly see how it looks over here. Go ahead entering information. Let's say the client goes ahead with entering information. Some of them are mandatory, and let's say the email is entered in here. Now let's say you validate, and you're going to be adding in the information. We're just going to click on saving the file. Once the file is saved, you can go back into the client intake over here. Import contact, upload client intake form. It's super simple. So your job is done when you send them the client intake form. And over here, you have client intake form that the client sent you, which you had downloaded into your computer. All that you're doing is an upload here, and it says successfully uploaded into the program. And once it's done, you're going to simply click on wait for it to finish loading. Okay, always important. Once it finishes loading, let's say I'm looking for the client's information, and you just see as soon as I entered it, client's information came in. You can verify if it's your own because I only added a couple of information, and the email ID is something that you can check. And if it's all there, you can just simply go ahead and start entering the details. All right. Now, that is one of the ways you could intake a client information. Another one is going into the client and uploading the client intake form that has been DIY. So to do that, you can go into any matter and go to document generation and go into generic forms, and first thing is to choose your own form that you're looking to use, which, like I said, you need to add in the tags. Once you add in the tags, you'll be able to download this form and send it to the client. So the tags are a very important thing that you need to make sure that you're adding in all the client dot first name, ulaw.client dot first name, ulaw.client dot last name. So you need to make sure the attribute tags are important. The first name is an attribute, likewise last name, and then address. All these attribute tags needs to be added to the ulaw tags. Once that's done, then you can just come in here, click on choose file and upload the form and download it, and you will see all the information of the client showing it up over here. You can also upload once, let's say you've downloaded a format and kept, you can enter the information at any time and upload the client intake form over here from the contacts too. Now, let's say that you're someone who would like to send your client like a link, a small link, and ask them to enter the information themselves. All that they're going to do is, one thing to keep in mind is you can go back into ulaw setting and go into contacts, and first ensure that you have, allowed yourself to use the ulaw portal. And given a secret key. Now, once you're done with that, you can then go back into the contacts and make sure that there's an email ID. That's a key point. If there's no email ID, your client will not receive an email from you saying that here's your link and please click on the link to fill in the client intake information. So please make sure that the client intake has the email ID entered in so that you can send them the client intake form, and you can go in from there. Once that's done, then you'll be able to send them like a QR code or a link, and ask them to enter the information and submit it online, and that would appear here automatically. Now, for all of you to see the recent one, which is one step above this, which is virtual verification. We're right here for the virtual verification, as I already mentioned. It is available in the ULaw program at an additional cost. And over here, you would see that ULaw has, again, under settings, virtual client ID verification. All that you have to do is make sure you go into ULaw and click on save. And once that is done, then you can go back into contact and ensure that every contact here has a client email ID. Now, as per the new regulation laid out by Law Society, when you're using technology to do an intake and you have collected the client documents or client ID documents, you need to verify them virtually. You will have to follow certain things such as accepting those emails that has been sent with the client's ID, and they have to be done with a facial accreditation or a SIM validation. And these are done from ULaw now, where all that you have to do is simply go into settings, and as I already mentioned, ensure that it is changed from none to ULaw. And one simple thing is when you click on contacts and you start adding the client information, just make sure that there's an email ID entered in there, because it's an important thing to have an email ID in place so that an email is sent to the client for them to add in their information, such as the client's facial recognition IDs, especially a driver's license or a health card or just a general client ID issued by the government. Now, let's say, for example, I add in the client's information. And one important thing that I wouldn't miss here is the email ID. And only if I have an email ID in place, I'll be able to send client an email. Once that's done, then you'll be able to send your client an email over here with the information, such as asking them or requesting them to complete the facial accreditation. Okay, so I'm going to take one of those examples that has my email ID in it, so that I can show you how it looks when a verification email is sent to them. Over here, you would see that under action, there's virtual client verification. Please always make sure to look into the rate card so that you know how much you need to pay for every facial accreditation, or you need a bundle of services. So you can always make sure that you are going in for the service that you need. And once you click on, let's say you want to do a facial accreditation, just click on the initiate option. That will enable you to accept charges and initiate. And if there's any error, obviously it will show like how it just showed you. It's probably something that is maybe they have already been sent. So it showed an error now because it has already been sent. So let me do another thing over here. I'd like to show all of you for this particular one that was just created. I had created a client's information over here. I can add in my particular email ID to showcase to all of you by sharing my screen as to how it looked. So just give me 1 second. I'm adding in this email ID of mine. Okay, and save it over here. Then now I click on action to do the virtual verification for this particular client. Simply click on action and then click on virtual verification. and send them an email with facial accreditation if you're planning to do that. Okay. Now, instead of error, I'm getting this information saying that the name of this candidate does not match the email address on the file. That's still okay. It's totally fine. So you can, once this happens, then you have initiated the process. Then you will get an email saying that your background screening. So your client will receive this additional information required from the, lawyer or a paralegal asking them for background screening. So over here, you have all the information. Your client will need to click on begin and start off with the process. Once they click on begin, this is what happens next. Their identity will be verified by a trusted Canadian identity verification provider. The information that is submitted will be sent to, obviously, if they're doing a criminal check or a basic or a detailed one, whatever, based on what your requirement is, it will be sent to Canadian Police Department for further verification. And once the background checks are completed, then an email will be sent to you as well as to our office saying that it has been notified and here's the result. And over here, they can, once they click on begin, all of these is what takes place. And once this is done, then you would see that particular thing with the virtual verification is also there on it. Over here, there's an action button. It also shows you the status. So shows you the status of the particular client and how it looks. So let me show you right now for one of this client that I already worked on, Cindy Crawford, for which we have already completed the verification, or rather at least initiated the verification, and it is in the process. Now, it will show the verification status as failed because obviously there's no person as Cindy Crawford. It's an imaginary person here, and they, only because of that it's showing completed, but it was a failure. And if you all can take a look at it, there are other things that I had initiated too, and it is on waiting on vendor or waiting on client side or awaiting any consent. It totally depends on whose side it is lying with, who has the file or who has not initiated, who has not completed the process. Depending upon that, it will show whether it's with the vendor. If it's with the vendor, obviously the person in charge would be completing the record check and passing it on to your email later on. And once it's done, the virtual verification, either it's manual or computerized, then you'll be able to further proceed with other steps. Now, if it's obviously waiting on client, then you will have to send your client a reminder or let them know that this is waiting on them. And if they are able to finish it, then you're able to proceed further with the rest of the verification process. And once it's done, then you will be able to take them on board. So it is recommended definitely by the Law Society that you do not open a matter if the virtual verification is not completed. So it is, again, important to do the virtual verification as on Jan 1st, 2024. This has been laid out by Law Society of Ontario, saying that every time you're using a technology to do your complete virtual verification, these are some points to keep in mind. And now if you're again using ULaw, you're completely benefited because there's no worry about the transition over here. All that you all are required to do is go into settings and agree to use the virtual client ID verification using ULaw. From none to ULaw, you switch over and then save it. Obviously, there's a save button that comes on the top. Once you save it, then you will be able to go into any contact. But the key thing here is the person who's your prospective client should have an email ID, and that email ID should match with their name or something in line with that. And once that's done, you can then initiate it by simply clicking on action and click on virtual verification, virtual client verification, and then always recommend you to take a look at the rate card, because you don't want to, then be surprised with charges. And this is per client. This is what we have put out here for you all. And once that is rather, you take a call whether you want to do a bundle of services or just one, and then based on it, you can just simply initiate it, and then you will be able to see whether if it's already initiated, then it will show you an error, or it will show you that please note that by accepting this, you're going to be paying for whatever you see as per the rate card. And then, the search initiation is successful, then it will show you that. And there's an email that is sent to your client, and then there's a copy that is sent to you as well. So obviously, the ULaw has nothing to do here. We do not get any information. We do not get any copy. It is between you and your client receives an email from you asking them to initiate the process. And once the process has been initiated and they complete it, and it will show over here under the verification status that, it's with the client, or it's with the vendor, or it's waiting with the candidate, whoever it is. So you will then be able to take a call as to what are the next steps and proceed from there. And over here, you would also see the thing that would be important to all of you is the verification status turns red when it is a failure. So please make sure that you have you're also able to download this to see what has happened in there, and that will provide you further information and evidence that you have conducted the virtual verification. So it is important whether the verification has been passed or failed. You will definitely need to download it for your records, so you're able to do the background screening. You are able to show the law society if you're being audited, or for some reason that you have done a background screening on this particular client, and whether it was a fail or what are the records that was requested for, and what is the update on each of them, whether you are able to provide them with a completion date, and all the other information here, including the email IDs and other information of the candidate is shown here. When I mean candidate, it is obviously a prospective client, is shown here with the information, residential addresses, history, and the current, I would say the current details of your client. Everything is over here, and all that you need to do is simply need to file this in your file, and you would have to keep moving on from there. Obviously, you would be repeating this for each and every client of yours that requires virtual verification, and you're going to be able to, do further on with all of these. That includes SIN validation, basic criminal record check. Totally depends from client to client as to which one are you planning to use. Circling back to compliances as part of today's meeting over here, you all can see that the document generation on the top right-hand side corner of ULaw that has a little tab called compliance. And under compliance, you would see there are more than just conflict check. I know many of us are so used to conflict checks, but we also have something called source of contact. Now, while I was talking, this one point that I would like to mention to all of you is when you are adding in a client, always try to add in their source of contact at the very beginning, so you will be able to draw these reports along with the completed information than incomplete information at the very first time, because otherwise you're going to be having to go back, update the information, and then come back, download the same report. So please remember, when you're adding in the information of your client's first name, last name, and then other basic information, Try to also add in information such as source of contact. So when you are doing Law Society compliance reports, you're able to download these from time to time. And once you download, you're able to file them, you're able to report on them. And right now, let's say I'm downloading the source of contact with today's date, and it'll also show me, I particularly typed in advertisement, or I chose rather advertisement. It will show me that I had one client that had completed intake today, and for one specific client, I was able to, add in the information as advertisement. And if I have any of them that has not been categorized, then it will show me clearly that there were these many of them that was not categorized, and will ask you to it'll also give you the names of them so that you can go back in and add in their information later on. Now, this is how a conflict check looks on the other hand. It shows you all the first name conflicts, last name conflicts, and other, full name and other matters. So wherever you have this, it shows you clearly, and you'll be able to move forward with creating the client intake or client file and go from there. Going back in there, it's also important for all of you to see a little client fee book under compliances. We also have client fee book, shows you clearly if there is anything. It'll show you if there was any matter done. If there is no entries into display, it will also show you as to there is no entry to display. All right, and one of the other important things for you all to note, which I could quickly recap for the virtual verification, is that please note that this is for every client intake that takes place, and using technology, this is done for obviously verifying the security of your clients and ensuring that the documents that you have collected need be a driver's license or need be health card. I mean, obviously, it'll mostly be the driver's license or any other with the address on it, with a piece of, client ID that carries address. And you want to make sure that, you use like a technology to complete this particular verification, not a manual one. When you're using technology, these are some things to keep in mind that, obviously you are collecting, a virtual piece of ID, or rather a soft copy of the client ID issued by the government. The key point here has to be that it is issued by the government, and it carries the original, if I say the logo or that particular picture that you see there is completely aligned with it. Now, if any of you have doubts on it, just feel free to always visit your respective Law Society website. Right now, I'm on the Law Society portal here. Right now, you can see how there's information laid out about virtual verification and what are the details that are required to be in context of virtual verification. And it also shows you clearly what is to be done when you're using technology and other things. Now, again, like I said, now if you're using ULaw, you can forget about worrying, or rather you can just forget completely as to what needs to be done and just follow what ULaw has, because we are completely 100% compliant with Law Society in that terms, as we will be soon implementing it. It will be live probably by end of this week, another couple of days. So you can all try it out at your end from the beginning of next week. And all that you have to do is go into settings, go into contacts, and update to ULaw as your virtual client ID verification portal, and then you will enable us to remote client, verify your client's information as per Law Society requirements. And every client that you add into the program, all that you got to do is click on action and initiate a client verification. And depending upon whether it's facial recognition or other verification services, please initiate them. And also remember to click on the rate card for virtual client verification. And once you have completed that by initiating it, your client will get an email ID and you can go from there. Please make sure that your client receives an email. And in order for the client to receive an email, please make sure you have an appropriate email ID of your client, and that email ID is verified, and you have entered that into the program, saved it, and then initiate the process. Without a client's email ID, obviously we will also not allow you to process any further. It will either show a failure or it will show you an error message. Once you have the email ID punched in, then you can click on action to proceed. And once you have initiated the process, whenever you would like to see the status, you can just simply click on status and click on whatever is the status to verify it or to look into it further. You can just simply click on the status and then click on download to verify the report. And this is how the report is going to look into. And you would be able to see what is the update as on today and what is the progress. It comes with a completion date too for you to take it forward. Now, this is definitely a big boon for all of you to see how it looks, and it is going to be saving you all a lot of time as you're letting us do the work on behalf of you, and with 100% compliance from Law Society standards. And I would say when you're spending that $5 more per client, it is going to fetch you much more because you are absolutely in compliance with Law Society, and you're also being more efficient as you're letting us do the due diligence while you are working on servicing your client and enhancing your overall practice. And this will be a good chance for you to also complete all of those requirements that is laid out by Law Society without any hassle. And, more than anything, all of this virtually, why not? Because in today's scenario, moving from one place to another place to verify your client's ID and to, catch up with your client, I don't think it's getting that much of time to complete all of these. But I mean, when it's done virtually, why not? So please opt for the service if you're someone who is already using EOLA. This is a big, I would say, a break for all of you from, verifying your client's ID and other things. So I think it's live as early as Monday, and if you all have any questions, I'm going to add my support team's email ID here for all of you to reach out to us on our support@eolawpractice.com. If you are not still seeing probably the update at your end, do reach out to us on support@eolawpractice.com, and one of our support staff will get connected with you on phone or through screen sharing to see how we can help you set this up. And thank you each and everyone for joining in for today's webinar. I have added in the attendance link and the topic for today's session too for claiming your credits. And for the ones who are probably attending the webinar for the first time, it is definitely helpful for you to use EOLA. Do go to our website, eola.io, and register for the 15-day free trial. And we'll be happy to add in this under your, under your idea too. So over here, I have many questions coming up for today's webinar. As I progress in, I can see this is professional or substantiated. This is a professional CPD webinar. EOLA generally does not provide substantiative hours. For another question here that talks about how is the facial accreditation completed? What does a client have to do? So just circling back to this point over here, now under facial accreditation, you would see that EOLA has a tab that says action. For every client, you'd find an action tab, and all that they have to do is click on virtual client verification and initiate their facial accreditation. And then we would be sending them emails such as, this particular one that you're seeing in here, where, your background screening and additional information required. And then your client will just have to click on begin, and they will go and start adding information of themselves with other details that they would like to, complete and move on to the next. And as they keep moving on to the next, we'll walk them through the required details to be filled in or attach any documents and then submit it. Then the third party, which will allow them to add in all the information and send it across to EULA, and we will be doing the virtual verification of the client ID. And then once that is done, you would receive an email, and your client will also receive an email with all the statuses and updates. So to verify that status is an update, all that you have to do is simply click on the action again, and you would see that there is the particular verification status tab under contact, and you would be able to see the client's verification status over there. So the key thing here to note is that you have to first go into settings and enable yourself to use the virtual verification. And once that is done, then you would be able to go in and start doing the virtual verification from the contact and action. If you need further information about it, please do reach out to us on support, and we'll be happy to set it up for you. Oh, and also we have a small video about the virtual verification up on our YouTube channel. So for all of those who are our YouTube, followers or at least subscribe to them, please do look at this particular video that talks about how can EULA help you with virtual verification. It's out probably early this morning or later last night. So it has absolutely all information that we need. It's a 5-minute long video, and it'll be helpful for you to know more things about the virtual verification and how it's done and how you can set it up at your end. Beyond this, if you still have questions, like I said, reach out to us on support@eulapractice.com. Thank you. I'll be hanging out here to add in more comments and on the chat window. I request each and every one of you to stay back for a couple of more minutes to probably make note of all useful links that I'll be sharing in here. And for the ones who have joined in for today's webinar, thank you very much. And it was wonderful to present this topic to all of you and also introduce the new regulation on virtual verification. For the ones who have been with us, please do try out this feature. As one, it's kind of the new regulation that's come up, and two, there's nothing, like I said, like getting work done virtually these days, and you'd probably save more time and have things done much more faster. And if you all have any questions, do reach out to us on support@eulapractice.com regarding setting it up. We'll be happy to help you the first few days. And I have shared more links here regarding our trial and our other resources. Request you to copy the link, and you could, it'll help you at the upcoming days. Once again, thank you everyone for joining in for today's webinar, and we'll have a new set of topics coming up for the upcoming months or weeks, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.